This is going to be a very important video, so be sure to really pay attention and take note of the concepts that we cover here. One of the most frequently asked questions that I get about Material UI and that I've seen online about people saying what's frustrating about Material UI is customizing the Material UI components, adding styles, and most importantly, changing the default styles. I personally don't think that Material UI components are hard to customize at all. Whenever I see people talking about that, it really confuses me, and I think that maybe there's just not enough clarity on some of these steps that you can go through to be sure that you always have the level of customization that's necessary. So in this video, we're going to add some styling to our components and customize our components and see a couple of my most important concepts for doing that. Alright, before we get started on this, you may have noticed a couple errors here in the console. They're not a big deal, but I figured we'd go ahead and just take care of them real quick. This first one, it's saying that it's looking for an icon from the manifest, but in our gatsby-config.js, we went ahead and commented out the icon, but for some reason that's still giving us some trouble. So for now, let's just go ahead and we'll comment out this plugin. This really is for like offline apps or progressive web apps, but I'm not going to get too much into that, but we might go over that later. For now, let's just go ahead and save that with the commented out, and it's going to take us over to the browser, say we need to restart if you had this already started for these changes to take place. So let's go ahead and hit OK and wait for that to restart the server. All right, once that's back up and running, we can go ahead, take a look at this next one. It says the prop children is marked as required in layout. So let's go over here into layout.js, and we definitely do have the children variable right there, the prop rather, and we're using it. So I really am not sure why it's asking for that, but I actually don't really care or use prop types too much so far. I definitely see situations where it would be necessary and would be helpful and would help with the clarity and explicitness of the code, but for now I honestly don't really worry about it. So go ahead and remove that and remove the import for prop types up above. Okay, just go ahead and save that. We flip on back to the browser. We can go ahead and refresh, and it looks like now we're just left with this last error. These are all the same, saying that the value provided to the tabs component is invalid. Okay, and that's because if we go into header.js, when we created our tabs, I mentioned that there is a value prop that keeps track of which tab you are actually on. And it looks like it's going to yell at us if we don't pass something in here for now. So we'll get into the actual solution for making sure this actually reflects the tab that you're on in a minute. Let's just go ahead and set it to 0. We can go ahead and save that. We can flip back over and refresh, and now we're back to having no errors. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and close out of that. And you can see now we've also got a little indicator underneath the hats tab saying that that is our active tab. So to introduce the concept of styling in our application, let's go ahead and flip on over to the code editor. And I'll just move this over here for a second so I can talk about it. But let's think about if we wanted to style this tab, the hats tab. Okay, or more importantly, one thing that people commonly ask is how to style that indicator so that the color can be whatever you want, even though it currently is, it looks like the secondary color because it's slightly darker green than this color. Okay, so it's pulling it from the secondary color from our theme, but what if we want to overwrite that color with whatever custom color we want? So the first thing that you need to know for setting our own styles on our components is the classes prop. Okay, the classes, not class name, but classes. Okay, this is a special Material UI prop that is going to allow us to specify all the styles that we want on any of the components. Okay, this is the best way to set your styles and override styles in Material UI. So we'll set this equal to something, and we'll make this some JavaScript that we'll inject. So that's the first pair of braces, and then this is going to be an object, so another pair of braces. To find out what we need to pass into this object, let's head on over to the Material UI documentation. Okay, so I'll open this up and let's find the tabs component. All right, and here we are. We've looked at this before, but let's go ahead and scroll all the way down here to the bottom. You see this API section. Okay, and this is really helpful because this describes all of the components on the page, as well as a lot of the components that will make up other components. So I'll flip back for a second. On the button page, here you have the button component, and as well as the button base component, which underlies the button component. Okay, that's important to know because anytime you want some functionality or to customize some styles on one component, it may actually be the underlying components that hold that functionality or styles. So it's helpful to know which of those components you actually need to point to. Okay, so I'll go back to the tabs page, scroll all the way back down, and here, let's go to the tabs component API. Okay, so when we click on this, this is going to show us all of the different props that we can pass to the component. So that's the first thing it shows is the props. So these are all the different props, the type of the prop, and then the default and a description that you can pass to the tabs Material UI component. Okay, so there's plenty here. And you can even see some of these props are tab indicator props. So this is a prop that lets you pass other props down to the tab indicator. Okay, so there's lots of different things here. This is really great to get familiar with. But you can also see here, if we scroll down to this section, CSS. And this gives us a rule name, a global class, and a description. This rule name is what we can use most commonly to style and customize our Material UI components. It's really helpful to know that almost every single Material UI component has a root rule name. Okay, so if you're just generally wanting to throw styles onto your component, then it'll probably work with a good old root, and then we'll talk about where we're going to get the next part of it in a second. But the next part will specify the styles that you then want to overwrite those root styles. Okay, but we'll flip back for a second, and you can see that they actually give us CSS names for different states that the component can be in. So if the element has the prop orientation of vertical, then we could use the vertical class to overwrite styles. So instead of root, we could do vertical, and then specify the styles that we want to be applied only in that case. Okay, so this is really cool, I think. It's very powerful and really helpful. And so if we come down here, we can actually see there's an indicator class. Okay, there's a class we could use just to specify styles for the indicator. Okay, so we'll use the indicator property in our object to specify those styles. So we can do indicator. And now we need to actually pass it the styles we want to apply to the indicator. Okay, so the first part of figuring out how we do this is to come up to the top, and under our other Material UI components, let's import, and we're going to destructure this out, make styles from @Material UI core styles. Okay. Now we're going to come down underneath our other imports, but above the export, and we are going to create a constant called use styles and set this equal to make styles. And go ahead and call it like a function. This is the pattern that you're going to use on every page and every file that you create with Material UI components that you want to style. You're going to import make styles and then create your constant of use styles. Inside of here, when we call make styles as a function, Material UI behind the scenes is going to pass it our theme. Okay, so we actually are going to pass a function into make styles, and that function will receive the theme. Okay, so we're going to pass in a function that is going to expect the theme prop, or argument rather, to be passed to it. We'll open this up as an arrow function, and then Normally you could do braces and open it up, but we're only going to be doing one thing in this function. So you can use parentheses to automatically return whatever you put in without having to do braces and then a return statement. You can instead just do parentheses and that will automatically return, but this has to be just a single expression. Okay, and so all we're going to return is an object. Okay, so get familiar with this pattern right here. This is something you will have to memorize, and that's something that you'll use every time you work on a new file. Okay, let's go ahead and open that object up. Now, here is where you can actually specify the styles that you want to apply. All right, so this is going to be in JSS, which we had talked about a little before. But first, inside this object, you specify your class name. And this can be anything that you want. So I'm going to call it our indicator, or rather, let's do colored indicator. Okay, and then this is a property in the object, our style object, I'll refer to this as. And let's go ahead and this class will be an object itself. Inside of this object, we're going to specify all the different style properties that we want to have applied. All right, and remember, one of the differences between regular CSS, which would be like font dash size, is that we can't do that here. We have to do font size with a camel case and a no dash. Okay, so any CSS property you're familiar with that looks like this, or maybe if it even has 2 dashes and then another property, you would simply camel case this, remove the dash, camel case this, remove the dash. Okay, so that's an easy rule to follow. We'll just go ahead to make this easy. We'll set the background color because this is the property that's actually controlling the color of our indicator. So let's set this value to, I'll just do the text red, even though I've actually learned it's faster if you know the actual hex to put in. Instead of white, you would actually put in FFF. It's a little bit faster, but I don't know the red off the top of my head right now, so I'll just pass in red. And then now we need to come inside of our function and above the return statement, create constant of classes equal to use styles, and go ahead and call that as a function. All right, so just like that, now we can access colored indicator from classes and apply this to the components that we want. Okay, so now in our classes prop, we've specified we want to overwrite the indicator styles, and now we're going to say we want to overwrite those styles with the styles from classes dot colored indicator. Okay, so now we're referencing classes here that we created with use styles, and then the class name that we created inside of our style object. All right, so let's go ahead and save this and flip back on over to the browser and check that out. We've got a red indicator.